All right, you're looking at live pictures from the White House. We're standing by to hear from President Trump. He's leaving shortly for a visit to Florida, and this will be his first chance to respond out loud to really this new round of the fight with his one-time friend, Elon Musk, who has gone after him again on the president's signature domestic tax and spending legislation. Let me show you on the screen here what Elon Musk put out overnight. He put out a tweet that said, anyone who campaigned on the promise of reducing spending but continues to vote on the biggest debt ceiling increase in history will see their face on this poster in the primary next year. Not subtle there. It says, liar, voted to increase America's debt by $5 trillion. All right, with us now, strategic communications expert and pollster and Democratic strategist Julie Rajinski. Let me just start with you, Lee. There's this new round in this fight. Musk is putting himself out there again. What will that feel like for those senators who've been up all night who have to vote on this shortly?
I mean, on the one hand, it's not surprising that Elon Musk is doing this. He's been very consistent about spending. This is very much what he's been talking about the whole time. On the other hand, the question is, it's really just about his ego. And are we getting in the limelight and having a fight? But I think that the Republicans who are making the vote need to not be distracted by this. We're seeing, though, a huge fracture within the Republican Party. 75% of MAGA Republicans support this bill, but 75% of non-MAGA supporters, Republicans, actually oppose the bill. So you've got a huge fracture in that party, and I think Elon Musk is symbolic of what that is.
And just so people know, Trump, on his Truth Social platform, has responded to Musk already. We haven't heard from him out loud, which we may shortly, but among other things, Trump accused Musk of wanting subsidies. He say Elon may get more subsidy than any human being in history by far, and without subsidy, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back to South Africa. So, Julie, the significance of this new rift, what do you see?
Well, first, is not wrong in the sense that Elon Musk has a tremendous amount of taxpayer subsidies from the United States going to his businesses. And the reality is that if Trump takes away those subsidies or threatens them, I think Musk will cave the way he caved the last time when Trump came after him. I mean, this is not a balanced fight because Elon Musk is the client and Donald Trump is the person who's providing him with the money in the form of the presidency. So, look, Musk can tweet all he wants, but the reality is that if Trump actually moves against him and takes away his subsidies or threatens them, I suspect Musk will cave.
The one difference with Elon Musk, whenever we're talking about him, is just the huge amount of money he has. And one of the other things he's threatening is to launch this third party, or is to fund a third party here. You guys have both worked in this business and have for a long time. How real do you think that threat is? What difference would that make?
I don't think it's real because I don't think Elon Musk will be the richest guy in the world or have that money if Trump moves against him. I mean, if Trump actually uses his platform to disqualify Elon Musk and also to take away his subsidies for SpaceX, take away subsidies for EVs and everything else that Musk wants, it's going to be very hard for Musk and Tesla, which is the primary derivative of his money, to survive, especially because Tesla's already going down. Democrats are not buying Tesla. And if Trump goes after him, Republicans won't be buying Tesla either. It's bad business practice for Musk. If he does this, if he does do this, and people follow him, and he does have a big following on Twitter and has this rift with Trump, you know, it doesn't help Republicans, obviously, because a third party will take away from them. Democrats are certainly not voting for any Elon Musk-backed party. So I don't think Trump is going to let it get to that point, because if he does, he understands it's going to harm him, it's going to harm the MAGA movement, and he does have this big sword of Damocles hanging over Musk's head in the form of subsidies.
Lee?
So my feeling is that Donald Trump is the one that has the huge following. And Elon Musk certainly helped Donald Trump in the election. There's no question about it. It gave him credibility. It gave him some voters that were on the fence. But it wasn't Elon Musk who was center stage. And I don't think that we're going to see people follow Elon Musk in the same way that we saw the MAGA movement. And certainly we have evidence of that in the Supreme Court elections and other things that, you know, Elon Musk tried to have huge influence and he ultimately failed.
So Donald Trump on his way to Florida, the president on his way to Florida shortly, and again, we could see him leave any minute now, but he's going to visit this makeshift prison built by Ron DeSantis very quickly, the governor there. They're nicknaming Alligator Alcatraz. They're going to put detained, undocumented immigrants there ready for deportation. What do you think of the optics and the politics of this?
Look, I think this is a Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis special. They are really, really good at creating theater and symbolic gestures that totally encapsulate the debate. Whether you talk about it as the wall, whether you talk about those flights to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard with immigrants, now we've got Alligator Alcatraz saying that we can move quickly and we can get tough on immigration. And I think it's the center of the debate. A lot of people are talking about the impact on the environment. A lot of people are talking about how inhumane it is. But the center of all of this is this debate about immigration and how we need to get tough on it. And in that debate, Republicans, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis are winning.
There's one more thing here. They're doing this today so that we don't talk about the big, beautiful bill. We don't talk about the cuts to Medicaid. We don't talk about the cuts to food subsidies. We don't talk about this incredibly unpopular legislation. Trump is going down there because he knows and he thinks that immigration is the #1 issue for him. It's the best issue he's got, and he's appealing to his base on this, and we're all talking about it. We're not talking about the horrible bill that's about to be passed, and he knows that.
We're talking about both, to be fair, but in terms of what he considers to be one of his best issues, nationwide border encounters, May 2024, 240,000, May 2025, 29,000. It's just a huge drop. Politically speaking, you can see why he would dip back into that well.
100%. But again, the timing of this is not coincidental. He's going down there today to distract from what's going on in Washington today, which is going to affect millions upon millions. It's going to affect all of us. And the reality is that he would rather talk about Alligator Alcatraz than he would about this bill.
But I think he's talking about a trifecta here. He is talking about the big, beautiful bill. He's not shying away about that. He's talking about immigration. He's talking about foreign policy. And on all fronts, his polling in the last week has really increased because people are seeing him as a leader. Now, the bill itself might be unpopular, but you know what people are saying? He's going to get things done. He's going to keep to his word. And so I don't think he's avoiding that conversation. I think he's adding to that conversation and saying, look, I'm getting legislation passed. I'm keeping my promises on that. I'm keeping my promises on immigration, and I'm keeping my promises on foreign policy.
Except he's not keeping his promises, right? He promised not to cut Medicaid. He promised not to cut any of these programs and the social safety net, and he's doing exactly that with this bill. And I think that's what's going to be very apparent to Americans, 12 million of whom will be thrown off of health care if this bill passes.
All right, Julie Rosensky, Lee Carter, thank you both again.